Hello, and welcome to this week's edition of the Retirement Compass, the show that helps you successfully navigate to and through your retirement. I'm your host, Kristen Oakley, and joining me in the studio are two financial advisors from Stonebridge Wealth Systems. We have the co-founder, Tim Kulhanek, and partner, Jeremy Gove. We've got a very special episode for you today. The title of today's show is Mission Possible, Retiring as a Public School Teacher here in the state of Nebraska. So if you yourself have been a public school teacher or you know someone who is, you definitely don't want to miss today's show. We've got a lot of valuable information to cover as it relates to planning for your retirement. Tim and Jeremy, excited to be with you and have this conversation. How are you guys this week?
Doing really good, thanks.
Good.
Yes, doing good, Kristen. How are you?
I'm doing well, thank
Good.
you. And I'm married to a public school teacher, so you know I'm all about this content. This is going to be a very important and informative show. But today's episode, again, is specifically for Nebraska public school teachers who are approaching retirement. And if you have spent your career doing one of the most hardest jobs on the planet, we applaud you and we want to help you successfully navigate through the unique opportunities that exist for you when it comes to your retirement plan. So we're going to walk you through everything that you need to know about MPERS and OSERS, the Nebraska Public Employees Retirement System, and the Omaha School Employees Retirement Systems, both mouthfuls to say, right?
Yep.
But we're going to talk about how your pension works, when you can retire, how to maximize your benefits, and the critical decisions you'll need to make that are irrevocable once you choose them. So this is a big deal. And I know, well, let's just start with why you wanted to have today's conversation, because clearly you work with a lot of public school teachers, correct?
Yeah, I do. Our entire team does. And, you know, it's personal for me. My mom's a retired school teacher. My wife was teaching up until we had our third child. So I've got aunts that have been in education. I've got just a lot of contacts that have been in public school education in Nebraska and other states. So I want to kind of set the groundwork that we're going to focus mainly on MPERS today, but there's mainly, I mean, they're 95, 98% the same, MPERS and OSERS. There's a few like perks that are kind of buried within the plans that OSERS has that MPERS doesn't, but the general framework is the same. So the first thing you need to know is these are defined benefit pension plans. So these aren't 401ks or 403bs. This isn't the type of plan like a defined contribution plan that a lot of people have in the private sector where they've got to contribute on a regular basis, and then they, basically you're responsible for your own retirement income in a 401k or 403b because it's dependent on how much you saved and how well your investments did, and then you have to start pulling money out and making sure you're taking a responsible, sustainable withdrawal rate. That's not how these plans work. These are based off of a formula. So I'm gonna have a slide that we put together to kind of explain how this formula works. We'll pull that up first. And it's calculated based off of your years of service effectively multiplied by your highest 3 years, depending on when you were hired. So there's different tiers I'll show you in a second, but on the from left to right, you take years of credible service, and you're gonna get a statement every year that shows you your years of credible service, times your final average monthly, FAMC is what they call it, final average monthly compensation, times the formula factor, which right now is 2%, and that's how you're gonna get your benefit. And I've got an example down there at the bottom that shows how you'd come up with a $3,000 or $36,000 per year lifetime benefit. Now the tiers are also very critical to understand because the longer you teach, the higher your salary, the bigger your pension, but it also depends on when you were hired. My mother was in tier 1, right? She was hired, she did almost 29 years, but she's been retired for over a decade. And so, it was her FAMC was her highest 3 years, and the rule of 85 started at 55. But you can see once you get to tier 4, that's for folks hired July 1st, 2018 or later. The FAMC is not only 5 years like in tiers 2 and 3, but also you have to be 60 before you can qualify for early retirement, vested early retirement using the rule of 85. So really important to get started with the basics of how do I actually calculate what I'm going to get.
And I think they're doing that obviously because we're living longer, right? They're adjusting that age accordingly.
Yep.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
For sure. All right, so Jeremy, why don't we just really boil it down here? Because I think one of the biggest questions that folks come in when they are working in these systems is when can I retire, right? When does it make the most sense? And of course that depends on so many personal factors, but when is typically the right time for Nebraska teachers to be eligible to take their retirement?
Yeah, so we have a slide that we can pull up on this, and there's really two main ways that you can retire with full benefits. So option one is I'm age 65 and I'm vested, that's the normal route that I could take. That's under normal, that's the one on the left. Then you have option 2, the rule of 85 that Tim was talking about just a moment ago. And that's when your age plus your years of service equal 85. For example, if you're 60 years old and you were a teacher or administrator or served in some capacity for 25 years, that adds up to 85 points, so you can retire with full benefits. So that's how that works. And then there's also an option to retire early with reduced benefits. And the way that rule works is you could retire at 60 with at least 5 years of service. However, if your benefit will be reduced by 3% for each year under the age of 65. So in our example, if let's say that I'm 60 years old, I'm retiring, and I want to go ahead and start my benefits right away, that's going to be a 15% permanent reduction to my benefits. And you can see that on the far left side. But each year that I get closer to 65, it's just reduced by 3% per year. So if I was 64, obviously it's just a 3% deduction. And in our example, we're using a $2,000 a month monthly income, and you can see that it'd be reduced by 3% depending on however many years you are prior to 65.
And I'm curious, do most folks have any awareness of this? As I'm looking, I mean, it gets very complicated.
It does.
Right?
I mean, the good news is that the school system, they do have like retirement seminars they put on that teaches you this. But like there's a packet of slides that you can get, and you can like that's where I got most of this information. Is usually there's a handbook online, and I've read through it, you know, cover to cover, and it makes your head spin really fast because there's these formulas and gives and takebacks. The good news is there's also calculators. They have benefit estimators online, npers.ne.gov, where you can go and get a little bit of help with some of this stuff. But most know, like a lot of them don't even realize that if you just take a distribution, like you can do a lump sum, but like your payout rate, this is a pension plan. Your payout rate could be like 15 or 18%. How are you going to recreate that if you have somebody that maybe isn't looking out for your best interest that tries to persuade you to roll it out? Like that could be a like unforced error and almost like a fatal error that could totally change the trajectory of your retirement. So what I want to do, real quick, I want to give an example of Mary. We'll call her Mary or Mary Lee maybe. You know, I know a gal named Mary Lee too. Let's say she's 58 and she's been teaching for 34 years. And her FAMC is 5,000. NPERS uses her highest 3 because she's tier 1. Tiers 2 through 4 again would use highest 5. We know what the formula is. So for Mary, that 34 years times 5,000 times 2% is $3,400 a month. That's a guaranteed lifetime payment. So she can't outlive it. But remember, if Mary retires at 58, she's 7 years under 65. So a lot of times people are like, whoa, wait a minute, Tim, but that's early. She can't do that because that's before she reached age 65. And the last slide on the right-hand side said you had to be 65. But that's not the case because the rule of 85 actually allows her to retire early, right? And so she won't have a reduced benefit because she's tier 1. She had to be 55 or older and have enough years of service to add up to 85. This, in fact, adds up to 92. She qualifies, no early retirement reduction.
So again, it's so important to know this stuff. I'm glad that you walk through it with folks because I think it can be very confusing, especially when you introduce the math. I know folks' eyes often tend to glaze over,
very
right?
fast,
And then again, everyone's situation is so different. But before we wrap up this segment, Jeremy, I want to ask about cost of living adjustments because I think that's the other important thing. So does NPERS pension increase over time?
Yeah, it does. It uses the same calculation that they use for calculating increases for Social Security. So it's a cost of living adjustments, the CPI-W, it's just, like I said, it's the same inflation as Social Security Administration. We do have a slide I'd like to pull up because that is capped. And so that's one of the, there's a downside to the cost of living adjustment in, you know, as part of this system. And that is that if you're a tier 1, in our example, like Mary or Mary Lee, they're capped at 2.5%. So if the CPI is 5%, we're only going to get 2.5% of that. If I'm in tiers 2 through 4, I'm capped at 1%.
I'm not going to keep up.
I'm not going to be able to keep up with inflation. And so the cost of living adjustment is nice to have. However, if I'm retiring at 55, the likelihood that I'm going to reach age 90 is pretty high. So I'm going to probably going to need to have other savings to be able to keep my standard of living the way that I would like it to be.
For sure. Well, for those who are watching who are either teachers themselves or have a teacher in the family or someone that they love who is a teacher, and they want help navigating all of this for themselves, what would you say to them? What are you able to offer through a meeting with you?
Yeah, I would say that, like, listen, you don't have to go this alone. We have an entire team of advisors across our 4 offices, Kearney, Grand Island, Lincoln, and Omaha. So whether it's in-person or OSERs, any type of pension plan, but this is obviously one that we've spent time studying, we're familiar with, and we can help be that guide, that trusted third party that you can ask questions to and find out what could your retirement potentially look like and which of the various options, which we'll go through in an upcoming segment, make the most sense for you and your family. And it all starts with a call to the number at the bottom of your screen.
Wonderful. Tim, Jeremy, thank you so much. To our viewers at home, that number to call to schedule your time to come in and receive your complimentary written financial review is 866-256-7778. Or if you'd rather connect online, simply grab your smartphone. You can scan that QR code there in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen, and that will get you connected as well. Don't go anywhere. When we come back, we're going to be talking about the various pension payout options, and we're also going to look at some real-world case studies that will do a really good job of helping you decide when it might be time for you to either continue teaching or to say, mission accomplished, time to retire. So stay with us to hear those right after this.
There's no shortage of opinions about annuities. Some people love them, others hate them. But here's what matters. The right annuity in the right situation can solve very specific retirement challenges. Whether it's guaranteed income, market protection, or legacy planning, different annuities are built to serve different purposes. The problem is, too many people own annuities that no longer match their goals, or worse, they never did. Some have high fees, others come with outdated features, and too often, people buy them without understanding what they're getting. If you've been holding on to an annuity for years, or if you're not sure exactly what you have or how it works, now is the time to take a second look. Our complimentary annuity review can help you understand what you own, what it's doing for you, and whether something better is available in today's market. Refinance your annuity today and make sure it's working for you, not against you.
Welcome back to the Retirement Compass. I'm Kristen Oakley here with both Tim and Jeremy from Stonebridge Wealth Systems, and we're so glad you're spending this time with us today. If you're just tuning in, we are having a very informative conversation. We're calling the show Mission Possible. This is retirement for public school teachers here in the state of Nebraska, and you guys did such a good job already explaining how NPERS works and how when teachers can retire. But now we need to talk about something that's incredibly important, and that is that these decisions, or at least aspects of them, are irrevocable. So talk about that.
Yeah, this could be one of the most important, if not, I mean, not could be, this is probably, if you're a teacher, the most important financial decision you will make in your lifetime. And I'm not using hyperbole there. You essentially have 3 options. You have single life, which is the maximum benefit, but maximum risk, because it's only good for your lifetime. So maybe if you're single, that makes sense. But if you have other people that depend on you, maybe it's not. There's joint and survivor. And then there's also like what we call life certain, which is like, I want it guaranteed for at least 20 years, or at least 15 years, I think is where the cutoff is. But if I live longer than that, I want to make sure that the payments continue for at least my lifetime. But I say this is the most important decision because there's significant pros and cons to both. But it not only affects you and your retirement, but again, if you're married, it could affect your spouse for the rest of his or her lifetime to such a substantial degree that it could be the difference between them being able to maintain their standard of living or having to radically shift to something that's probably a lot lower level of standard of living.
Yeah. So again, it's very important for folks to get it right the first time and have that guidance before this decision is made. So Jeremy, let's start with the single life option. Explain how that works.
Yeah, so it's pretty straightforward. It's based off of your life. So I'm going to get paid if, we can use Mary as our example. So if Mary's going to be retired for 34 years, she's going to get that payment. It's going to continue to grow based off the cost of living adjustment, but it's based off of her life alone. Mm-hmm. And so now the advantage to doing that, it's going to be the highest amount that you can possibly get because it's just based off your life expectancy, right? And so if you're in our example, Mary was collecting $5,000. Her FAMC was $5,000, so she's collecting $3,400 a month. That's about $40,800 a year. And so if you take that times a 2% inflation over roughly 30 years, it's $1.7 million that she's going to collect. It's a substantial amount of money.
It's a big decision.
It's a huge decision. And the downside to that is it's based off of her life only. So if she collects 1 month's checks and passes away, the rest of that is gone. Yep. So even if you die 1 month into it, and so for people that are in that situation where if you're single, that would make a lot of sense because you're not going to get a benefit for anyone else if you're just a single individual. But if I'm married, I may want to look at another option, or maybe I set aside some of that income to buy a life insurance policy that maybe it could even be a term policy, but it gets me out 20 to 25 years where at least we've collected that income and I'm not going to be hurting my family with that.
Because it sounds very potentially risky for married couples to choose that, right?
Yeah.
So then what's the alternative?
Let's walk through joint and survivor. So there's 50%, 75%, 100% joint and survivor. 50%, if Mary's getting $3,000 and she did 50% joint and survivor, then the husband in this scenario would get half that, $1,500. I've got a slide that I put together because sometimes, for the folks out there that are visuals.
Oh, me too. Yes, visual helps.
It's just a lot easier to be able to see this rather than to just hear it.
Right.
So you can see if her full benefit, and what I did here is it's a little bit of a shift from our earlier numbers because we're trying to just keep this as simple and straightforward and round as possible. I went to npers.ne.gov. I ran this actual scenario, so this is directly from the state of Nebraska's benefit estimator. It says her life-only benefit would be bumped a little bit from where we were, $34,2356. But you can see 100% joint and survivor, that's $287 per month less than life-only. But after Mary's death, her husband, her spouse, continues to get $3,137. So, you got to look at this on a case-by-case basis. If she lives for 30 more years, she'll have paid like $103,000 over her lifetime for that protection. But if she doesn't, right? What if she dies halfway into that and in 15 years she's gone? Her husband, in this case, his name's John, he lives another 15 years, he gets $560,000 where he would have got zero had she chosen the life-only benefits. You got to look at things like age differences, the age gap between spouses, health history, family history. A lot goes into making an intentional decision when you're deciding which one to pick.
Well, and then there's one more category too that we also have to address, which is the life certain option. So Jeremy, can you explain those?
Yeah, so we have another slide just to help everybody understand the numbers. So the show life certain, the timeline is 5, 10, or 15 years. And so basically what that means is if Mary, in our example, if she were to pass away in 10 years, and she has, I'm sorry, if she lives past 10 years, I should say, nothing's changing, right? So she's guaranteed payments through 10 years. Her family's guaranteed those payments as well. If she lives to another 30 years, she's going to keep collecting those payments, right? So that's just, it's kind of like an insurance. This is the way I usually explain it to my clients. It's an insurance that if you happen to make a decision and you pass away early, God forbid, then at least your family's going to get some of that income. So the 5-year certain, you're guaranteed 60 payments. The 10-year certain, you're guaranteed 120 payments. And 15 years would be 180 payments. So that's how the period certain works.
Got it. So lots of things to understand, lots of things to look at. How should teachers who are watching today's show go about making this decision?
Well, I like to use the word intentional. And, I think I'd like to leave our audience in this segment with a little bit of a little more personal story, because I told you that my mom was a teacher. And she was a teacher in Nebraska for nearly 30 years. She taught in Pleasanton, Broken Bow, and Kearney. And her last stint of teaching, she was a 5th grade teacher at Central Elementary School. And believe it or not, yes, she was my teacher. So boy, I had to mind my manners. But
did she retire right after that?
That was the final straw. No, my fingers were really beat up from that ruler smacking me. No, just kidding. But early on in her career, she loved it. It was meaningful, fulfilling work, and she was great at it. But as she got closer to retirement, something shifted, and what used to be excitement when August rolled around, it turned into
dread.
It was heavy, and she was having to deal with all the thoughts of I got to go back to there's an in-service day and I've got meetings and plans that I got to put together.
Right.
And she started thinking like a lot of other teachers that are probably watching this show right now. And that is asking the question, how much longer do I have to do this? How much longer do I have to continue to sacrifice time with my family because I don't have time off, right? I don't have the ability during Christmas to go visit family in another state because I don't have enough days, personal days. Otherwise, I'm gonna have to pay that back. And growing up, I've got 2 older brothers. One's just 2 years older than me, and him and I, we got to do a lot of things. We had a lot of opportunities, and whether it was, baseball, travel team stuff, basketball, Legion baseball, summertime was great, and Mom would be with Tony in one side of the state, and Dad would be with me in the other. And I didn't realize at the time, like, that, now I do. A lot of kids didn't have the opportunity to do those things. So why did I? I just assumed my parents had money, right? My mom was a school teacher, and my dad sold cars, And what I found out later on is that it wasn't necessarily that they were making just gobs of money. What they were making was sacrifices, right? Sacrifices to allow my brother and I to have experiences and opportunities that they didn't have when they were growing up. And so, like, this isn't theoretical to me because, like, I can look you in the eye and I can tell you one thing for certain. If it weren't for this plan, if it weren't for the Nebraska Public Employee Retirement System for teachers, my parents would have never been able to retire. And I've seen what this looks like if you get it right. And I also know what it looks like if you make a mistake and you get it wrong. And so the reason why we're doing this show, what we're trying to prevent is having a situation where people look back and they say to themselves, I wish I would have known then what I know now, and I would have done this differently. Because like Kristen said, this is an irrevocable type of decision. So if you're watching this and you want to know more about your numbers and what strategies might work for you, whether it's the joint and survive or if the life with certain, what's the best strategy for your unique financial situation? That's why we're inviting you to reach out to the number on your screen today so you can get clarity on these things, not pressure. We're not trying to sell you anything. What we're trying to do is making sure you're clear on what your options are, the best strategy for you moving forward, because it's not just about retiring, it's about retiring well. And we look forward to seeing you soon.
Wonderful. Very well said. Thank you for sharing that story, Tim, Jeremy, and we hope that this is going to be helpful for you and those that you love as well. 866-256-7778 is the number to call to schedule your complimentary written financial review, or again, you're welcome to scan that QR code and that will get you connected as well. Stay with us. We're going to continue this important conversation and talk about maximizing your benefits as public school teachers here in Nebraska right after this.
There's no shortage of opinions about annuities, and some people love them, others hate them. But here's what matters. The right annuity in the right situation can solve very specific retirement challenges. Whether it's guaranteed income, market protection, or legacy planning, different annuities are built to serve different purposes. The problem is, too many people own annuities that no longer match their goals, or worse, they never did. Some have high fees, others come with outdated features, and too often people buy them without understanding what they're actually getting. If you've been holding on to an annuity for years, or if you're not sure exactly what you have or how it works, now is the time to take a second look. Our complimentary annuity review can help you understand what you own, what it's doing for you, and whether something better is available in today's market. Refinance your annuity today and make sure it's working for you, not against you.
Welcome back. Today, Tim, Jeremy, and I have been talking about MPERS. This show is all about helping public school teachers here in Nebraska retire well. And what we want to talk about now is maximizing your benefits. And so, Jeremy, I understand that teachers in the state of Nebraska can actually purchase additional service credits. So explain that.
Yeah, so in simple terms, they're just adding they're actually buying service credits, as you mentioned. It can increase your pension, right? Because it's going to add additional years of service. You can also allow it or use it to allow you to retire sooner. And so that's really what we're talking about. It's something that is overlooked. We meet with a lot of teachers. It's something they don't really even understand that they can do that or how that works. So there's a few different ways that shows up or why it would be maybe make sense for someone. If you're buying back time that you've already worked, if you're an out-of-state teacher, if you're an Omaha Public Schools teacher, if you're if you had prior service that was refunded to you, or if you're buying additional time, it's basically you can buy up to 5 extra years of service credits. So it's something that's overlooked, but it's an easy thing that to talk through.
And is that typically a good idea to do that?
In some scenarios. So I've got a chart, and I know we're coming in on a landing here for this show, but I've got a chart I'll pull up here that'll talk about when it might make sense. So there's a lot going on here with service credits, but you can buy back the time already worked, or on the right-hand side, kind of in the middle, it says buy additional time. That's at up to 5 years of service. That's the big one for most teachers because they're using it to hit the rule of 85. So my example is if Mary's 57 with 27 years, she has 84 points, she's 1 year short. So what she does, she buys a service credit. It cost her $19,226. Again, I took that directly from the NPERS website, but it unlocks her pension 1 year earlier, which her pension is $33,600. So she's 14 grand ahead. So does it make sense? For her it did. So sometimes, but again, we will help walk you through whether or not it makes sense for you.
Right. Anything when you're like, where it just doesn't make sense if the number's negative?
I mean, yeah, it could if if you're early on and you think that your wages are going to rise substantially. Well, you'll want to get the high 3, so maybe you want to delay because that FAMC is going to go up, right? If you're going to get a big bump, and well, maybe it makes sense to wait it out a year or two.
Well, what do you want to leave our viewers with as we wrap up today's important conversation?
I just think it's important to have a plan. We talk about this all the time. You have to know what your options are, right? That needs to be laid out for you, and then you need to know how does this NPERS piece, how does this fit into my overall plan? So that's what I would encourage people to just pick up the phone and call, because if you don't know some of these details that we've talked about, or if you haven't had this outlined for you in the past, it's really important to have that just broken down, and then you can make an educated decision. And that's really what the Retirement Compass is all about. It's about making educated decisions, so that we know how this will impact you and how this will benefit your family and your loved ones.
For sure, because as much as we can talk about this in generalities, there's no one size fits all, and everybody's situation is different. So, well, I hope more educators are going to get connected with you and the team of Stonebridge Wealth Systems as a result of today's show. Jeremy, Tim, thank you. And thank you for watching. 866-256-7778 is that number to call to schedule your complimentary written financial review. Thank you so much for watching, and we look forward to being back with you next time here on the Retirement Compass.